just to let everyone get logged in. We're happy to have you all here. So just a little brief introduction and some housekeeping. So you'll notice that when you join the call, you're muted. Throughout the call, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or you can also just drop any questions or comments in the chat. We're also live on our Montessori Thrive Facebook group. So if you're joining us from there, you can use the comment section on Facebook. I'll keep an eye on it and make sure any questions asked there get answered as well. Welcome to our Montessori Town Halls. We host these every single Thursday as a free safe space for Montessori school leaders to come together and discuss different leadership topics. We feel it's important for school leaders to have a space where they can come together, connect, discuss different leadership topics, and just find support. We know it can get lonely at the top. All of these sessions are also posted on our YouTube. So if you ever want to watch the recording back, you can just go to the Nido Marketing YouTube channel to watch those. They're always accessible, and we want everyone to be able to check them out whenever it's convenient to you guys, because we know it's a busy job. Today, we're joined by Lorena Seidel. We're really happy to have her here. She's presented at a few of our town halls now and a few of our parenting series as well, because we host those twice a year to help Montessori schools educate their families. And she's here to talk about raising emotionally intelligent children and how really that will help parents and families in every Montessori school build a stronger bridge between school and home. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to her so that she can give her presentation. And like I said, if you have any questions or comments throughout, feel free to unmute yourself or ask in the chat.
Thank you so much for having me here again. This is a pleasure and an honor. I'm always excited to join these meetings, and I'm super excited to share this presentation. And the goal is to help us bridge the gap and get parents and teachers and us educational leaders all on the same page and really sharing a vision together. And I always say that we're all in the business of raising this next generation of amazing human beings who will finally heal humanity. So I feel like that's the business we're in. And when we work, all of us together, parents, teachers, and educational leaders, I think that that's when we can make it happen. So that will be the presentation. And this is a very similar presentation that I just presented last month at the 29th International Montessori Congress in Bangkok. And it was a big hit. So I think you guys are going to really love it. And I would love to just spread this message, far, as far as I can. So I'm super glad that you guys are here. I'm so sorry. It might be a little noisy here. I have neighbors doing yard work, but just my luck. Alrighty, so mindset, as you're probably listening to, I think it's like the new thing. Everybody's talking about mindset. I studied mindset a decade ago when it wasn't cool yet, but mindset is responsible for 80% of our children's future success. So when you think of your students, 80% of their success inside and out of the classroom will come from their mindset. And we also have the emotional intelligence component, which is also a big piece of that mindset component. And this is a quote from John Gottman. This quote is a bit old, so he says in the last decade or so, but you can say the last few decades, a couple of decades or so, science has discovered a tremendous amount about the role that emotions play in our lives. And researchers have found that even more than IQ, your emotional awareness and ability to handle feelings will determine our success and happiness in all walks of life, including relationships. So you probably know that emotional intelligence, mindset are really the skills of the future. And I think especially now with artificial intelligence taking over and with our kids being able to really Google any sort of academic knowledge that they might need. Academic knowledge is not as relevant, and these softer skills, social skills, emotional skills, mindset is really becoming top of the list, and it's what's going to set our kids apart from, in the future since artificial intelligence will be able to do so much, we will have, the advantage we have is the emotional and mindset that machine cannot replicate that yet. So I'm Lorena Seidel, and I'm a mindset and emotional intelligence consultant for families and for schools. I'm a certified Montessori teacher, an AMS for primary years, and I taught at really cool Montessori school here in Greenwich, Connecticut for several years, for 7 years, called the Whippy School, which was where the American Montessori Society started. So I feel like I learned from like really wonderful teachers. And I was like so young back then when I started out. And I'm also an IBO certified teacher for levels 1, 2, 3. And then I'm a positive discipline educator for both parents and teachers, so for classrooms and parents. And I'm a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. I published a little book called The Purposeful Child. And I'm a mother of 3, which is really my biggest accomplishments. The three daughters that I have. And they are the reason I do all this work. I grew up in South Brazil and in a very, negative family dynamic. And I feel like I was wired and programmed to be a very reactive mom, very, patterns of, just negative, toxic parent-child dynamic that I grew up with. So I dove into this work so I could be the mom that I wanted to be and the mom that I wish I had. And then when I figured it out, a way to rewire myself, I started helping, families. And now it's been thousands of families, thousands of teachers. So I help educational leaders create a thriving learning environment that supports the emotional well-being of everybody in their community, the students, the teachers, the families. So it's really bringing everyone together. So I don't know if you remember this, a couple of years ago, the Oscar and that slapping incident between Will Smith and Chris Rock. Does anybody remember this? Yes. Oh, well, it was all over the place, happened live, right? And in this moment, right, in that moment, what skills were they lacking? These are two, successful, talented humans, right? But in that moment, Chris Rock was maybe lacking some empathy, maybe some common sense, maybe some compassion around a sensitive topic. And then Will Smith was lacking self-control, self-regulation, emotional stability, communication, problem solving, right? If he had those skills in that moment, this wouldn't have happened, right? Both of them. So I always like to start with this because these are grown men who in that moment lack the emotional intelligence, but they're not the only ones, right? These are the ones we can remember. And this was just a good example of which I thought most of you would relate to. But if we look around in our society, at us, right? But also just all around us, almost every problem in our society can be traced to a person's lack of emotional intelligence skills, from like drivers that are flipping each other or all the way to mass shooters and everything in between, right? It's people who in that moment lacked the skills. And I think the biggest misconception for adults, parents, teachers, right, is that we think that children will grow into becoming kind and empathetic, confident, emotionally stable eventually. So many of our families and teachers are, we're just hoping that we're all doing our best, we're trial and erroring, and that eventually, and we sometimes get confused with the fact that, the brain takes about 25 years to mature. And we hear this, right? Like they will have the skills about the age of 25. But it doesn't mean that they will actually have the skills at the age of 25. It just means that they will be capable of to develop and to have access to the skills. That frontal part will be developed enough that they could have the skills by the age of 25, but it's not a given, right? It's not for sure. So it's not true that they will just eventually have. It's not a given. It's not for sure, because social and emotional skills, they don't come with age or brain maturation. They really only develop with practice. And I think that that's just one of the biggest things I always want the families to understand, and the teachers. And I think when we are trying to bridge that gap, making sure that this message is coming across, and that parents know that we need to use the everyday challenges, and that teachers also know that we need to use those everyday classroom challenges to grow and to develop the skills. If we don't practice, they won't just show up, right? So the proof that they don't just show up is that there are millions of grown adults who are not kind or empathetic or confident or emotionally stable, right? So we see it all around us, even ourselves at moments, right? We haven't quite mastered it, that state of mind and the skills, especially in moments of frustration, right? In the heat of the moment, that's typically when those skills go out the window. So that's a big piece for us to keep in mind. So now when I work with the schools and help the educational leaders, create this environment that is supporting everyone, a big piece in bringing everyone together is seeing that this lack of emotional intelligence and a growth mindset is linked to so many problems that our either teachers are dealing with and handling inside of the classroom, or parents really fear in the future, and that us just as a society are handling. So, violence, anxiety, depression, bullying, drug, alcohol abuse, suicide, low motivation, low achievement, low self-esteem, and more, right? It's all connected to that lack of mindset, growth mindset, and emotional intelligence. And mental health challenges, as you know, and especially since COVID, it's on the rise. And now the statistic is that suicide is the second leading cause of death among ages of 10 and 24, which to me is just crushing, data. And so this, becoming this emotional intelligence school and helping our teachers and families all get on board with, really stepping up into this bigger, better role of being our students and our children's social emotional coach, right, is so crucial now if we want to prevent many of these things that most parents are losing their sleep over it, or, they fear this for the future. So just having that peace of mind, knowing that we are addressing these things in a proactive way instead of, reacting to these things as they happen. Well, so who are your students' social emotional coaches? We are, right? The parents and the teachers. So when I'm on a live workshop with families and I ask this question, I usually start out the workshop asking, so who is your child's social emotional coach? And they look at each other and they whisper, like, should we hire someone? Is it the teacher? Who's doing that, right? And it turns out that it's us, right? Our kids have, we are the most influential as parents, and then as teachers, right? Teachers spend almost, if not more time with the children these days. With all of the afternoon activities, parents are spending less and less time with their kids. So really that time is being split between the parents and the teachers. And many parents and teachers tell me, but I don't feel equipped to do this. I didn't have any formal, coaching in emotional intelligence growing up. My teachers, we didn't have a subject in school that was emotional intelligence or social emotional learning. Our teachers and coaches as we grew up didn't really, maybe they weren't that emotionally intelligent themselves. Many of us grew up in families who were not that emotionally intelligent either. So many adults feel inadequate or not equipped to do this. They're like, but how can I coach them? I'm not even sure I have all these skills. But the reality is that no matter what, doesn't matter if we like it or not, if we want to take on this role, the thing is, we either put in the time and the effort and the energy on the front end of things by setting the emotional climate, helping our children navigate their emotional challenges and deal with the ins and outs of relationships and all of that, or we end up putting the time and the effort and the energy on the back end of things in a reactive way by then having to deal with the behaviors. Many teachers will say, right, that they spend 80% of their time dealing with the 20% of the students that create 80% of the trouble. So then we end up having to waste the time there, dealing with the behavior issues, dealing with the aftermath of their emotional challenges, with the 30-minute tantrums and the meltdowns, the blow-ups and all of that. So do we adults, parents, teachers, educational leaders have the best intentions? Absolutely. Do we have the best strategies and the best mindset and the skills? Not really. So we're all working on this. And of course, you're all here to learn even more. And my goal, of course, with this talk is that, perhaps we can bring this knowledge, training, experience, all of this to the teachers and the families in your school, right? So everybody can become better equipped and more emotionally fit. Okay, so for me, here's where things clicked. So it was many years ago. Is this noise really, really bothering you? He's like right here, right now, on my deck, blowing leaves.
No, you're good. We can mostly hear you, so don't worry.
Okay. So for me, it was a few years ago when my little one was maybe 4 and she got a cut on her chin. She just fell and hit a bench right in our house, right in front of my husband. And we went to the emergency room, and you probably know what that experience is like, going to the emergency room with a child. Has anybody been to the emergency room with a child with a broken something or stitches or anything? Well, we get there, it was nighttime, and the doctor was like, it's big enough that definitely needs stitches, but it's small enough that it won't really be covered by the insurance. If you want the plastic surgeon to come, so do you want to just do regular stitches or the plastic surgeon stitches? And I called my husband and asked him, and he was like adamant about, no, absolutely. We want the plastic surgeon to come. We don't want her to have a scar on her face. I think he was feeling extra guilty too, because she was with him when it happened. And we called the plastic surgeon on call that night. She came 9 months pregnant, poor thing, and stitched Juliet up. And then she said, well, now for the next 7 days, you need to put in the cream twice a day. And then in 7 days, come back to my office for me to remove the stitches. So we did that. And 7 days later, I took time from work. I got her out of school, went to the office. She removed the stitches. And then she said, well, now you have to massage to break down the scar tissue. And you have to put sunscreen anytime she goes outside. And in that moment, it hit me. I was like, wow, this is a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of resources. And it wasn't cheap that visit to the ER for this one little injury. It was a 1 centimeter injury. And all because we didn't want her to be left with a scar, physical scar. And in that moment, I asked myself, what are we doing to make sure she's not left with emotional scars? And in that moment, I realized I am so quick to dismiss her feelings. Sometimes she'll get hurt and I might say something like, you're fine. Maybe she tells me I hate my sister or something like that when she's angry. And I'm very quick to say, oh, you don't. You guys are going to be best friends. You love your sisters. I talk her out of feeling what she feels. I dismiss it. I distract, right? And sometimes maybe she has fears and anxiety. And I might say things like, don't be silly. There's nothing to worry, right? So we're so quick to try to just move on and get over, right, the emotional injuries. And we spend so much time on their physical injuries. And I was like thinking, why is that, right? Why in our society we value so much, the physical, but not the psychological and, the mental, that part of ourselves. So that's when I started, and this kind of, took place in me, and I was already working with parents, but it took this new direction where I focused on helping our children grow up without a whole lot of emotional damage and grow up in a really healthy, peaceful dynamic where these emotional injuries are not happening as often. So let's dive in a little bit. So one big thing that I always find it, when I'm communicating to the parents or the teachers, is that to anyone, is the fact that we adults spend almost all of our adult lives trying to get over the emotional damage of those first 18 years, and even the first decade, if you think about it. And we go to therapy when we still are talking about mom and daddy issues and that kid that bullied us in middle school, right? And the statistics tells that people in therapy spend an average of 7 years in therapy, right? So I just realized, I wanted to find a way to help first raise children that won't need to spend that many decades trying to sort it out, the trauma, right? So I knew I needed to help parents have a relationship with their children that's not causing emotional damage, right? So that was one piece, which is that parenting education piece. And then I needed to help children develop this invincible mindset, this unshakable sense of self, this unbreakable sense of connection with others, with themselves, within their family, within their community, so they would be able to they would be able to heal, resolve these things, and learn from it, and move on in a powerful way, right? And not carry on so much emotional baggage for so many years, right? So that's how the work started. I was like, how do I make this happen? So I imagine a world in which all children grow up in a peaceful, healthy home, and then every parent feel good and proud of themselves at the end of the day, right? So that's like my biggest goal. Every time I work with a school, is to help the adults feel really good about how they are dealing with the behaviors, how they are dealing with the kids' emotional challenge, and for all children to have this peaceful, healthy, either classroom or home environment. So now, of course, I go all over the country, now all over the world, helping educational leaders create this amazing environment where everybody feels supported, and help teachers and parents rise above their own emotional challenges so they can become, these worthy adults and role models that we talk so much about, especially in all the Montessori schools. So I want to do an exercise with you. So you guys are going to play with me a little bit. So you can use the chat, or you can unmute yourselves and think about it this way. So this is one of the exercises that I typically bring to the schools and run this with the teachers, with the students, and then also do it during a parenting workshop. So I want you to ask yourselves, right? How do we take care of emotional injuries? What are our children learning about handling emotional challenges? Even like a little toddler or primary student they know so well how to take care of their bodies, right? When I go to the schools and I work with from pre-K all the way through 8th grade and beyond, and I do the same exercise and I get these most amazing answers. And when we think in terms of physical body, they raise their hands so quickly to tell me what to do if their bodies get hurt. And, you know, you probably hear this. If this was your, you know, one of your classrooms and you were watching this, and I asked your students, what do you do if your body gets hurt? You will probably see little hands saying, we put a wet paper towel, we put an ice pack, we use a Band-Aid. If it's very deep, you might need stitches, you might need to go to the doctor, you might need a cast, right? And on and on. And I asked the students, I'm like, okay, this is great. You know what to do with when your body gets hurt. And then I asked them, well, what could happen if you got a big cut, but you didn't do anything? You didn't go to the doctor, you didn't get the stitches, or you got a broken bone and you don't do anything about it. What do you think the students would say? You can put it in the chat or you can unmute. So think of even the youngest students all the way from like lower or upper elementary. Let me see in the chat if there's anything. So when a child is asked, if you don't take care of that big cut or a broken bone, what could happen? What do you think they say? Your injury will get worse, it gets worse. It will keep hurting, you'll get germs in it. Yep. Perfect. That's absolutely what they say. They're like, it could get infected, it could fester, and then like some are more dramatic, like it could even kill you, which is true, right? And then with a broken bone, they're like, it's not gonna be set right. It's gonna maybe hurt for a long time. It might not look right. You might not be able to play your favorite sport. It won't move the right way, and on, right? And I said, well, that's absolutely true. And now, have you heard of, that say that time will heal all wounds? Raise your hand if you have. Yep. That is not true. That is a big, as a society, we all say these things, right? And then if we ask ourselves, is that true? Really is not, right? Because we adults are spending so much time trying to heal the emotional damage of the first decade, right? Like time doesn't heal all wounds, and time alone especially, right? So just like a physical injury, no parent in this world, right, if a child has a broken bone or a very deep cut, would never just, oh, time will heal it. Like nobody's gonna ever do that. You're gonna go there, set it right, put it in a cast. Now you give 6 weeks, 8 weeks, right? You're gonna get the stitches, clean it, take a tetanus shot, whatever, and then you give time, but never just time alone. So now let's take a look at the daily emotional challenges, because here's the thing. Our kids are going through physical injuries every now and again, here and there. But our kids they don't need a cast every day. They don't need stitches every day. They don't even need a Band-Aid every day. But when it comes to emotional injuries, our students, our children are going through these emotional injuries every single day, multiple times a day. And we know so little about what to do with with those emotional injuries, and we teach them so little about it. So when I ask the students about how they take care of their emotional injuries, that's when they look at me a little bit confused, and teachers even, or parents, right? They're like, okay, what are the emotional injuries, right? The students, very sweetly, they actually know all this. They don't know these words sometimes. They don't know rejection. But when I ask them, I say, it's not something that hurts your body, but something that hurts your feelings. Or it's not a broken bone, but a broken heart. What are the things that make you upset or hurt? Right? And then their little hands starts going up and they say, when a friend doesn't want to sit with me, doesn't want to eat lunch with me, or when I don't get invited to a birthday party or to a play date, right? So they share that, and I say, oh yeah, that's rejection. So they don't know the word rejection perhaps, but they know the injury, right? They might say, when I get angry, right, frustrated. They might say, I asked, anyone here worries or is afraid of anything, right? Or stressed out, and then they raise their hand. But they talk about, it hurts me or upsets me when I lose my, my teddy bear. Some might say when they lose a pet. Some have lost a grandma or a grandpa, right? Like, that's grief. They don't know the word grief, but they know that injury. And then, when people laugh at me, when people call me names, right? So humiliation, belittling, all of these things, right? When I get a bad grade, or when I miss the goal or the shot when I'm playing sports, right? So failures, mistakes. So that's a list, right? Of all these emotional injuries that we all go through every single day, multiple times a day. Then I asked, before I go there, so let's talk about what we typically know to do. So I asked the children, what do we know to do for these emotional injuries? And often they don't really come up with anything, right? And the things that come up are typically the typical things that we do, but they're not so helpful. So we hide or ignore the feelings, right? So if I ask any one of you, hi, how are you? I bet you guys are all going to say you were fine, even though you may not be fine. We stuff it in, we distract, right? We find, some of us will shop our feelings, some of us will drink our feelings, eat our feelings, binge watch our feelings, and we will distract ourselves. We minimize our emotional injuries, or we act out, right? We create drama, we attention seek, we power seek, we revenge seek, we yell, we hit, or we try to punish, the other person, we pay back, all those things. Sometimes we develop then, limiting beliefs about ourselves, about the other person involved, or just the world around us, and we feel inadequate. And, we do all these things. We start this out when we have babies, right? And then we're distracting them when they are upset. Look out the window, or shaking something in front of them. And then it goes on, right? Even that day at the ER, they did give my daughter a popsicle while we were waiting. They did turn the TV, which is nice because, we needed a little bit of time. But what I try to explain to the students is that that can help. They say sometimes like eating ice cream or playing video games, right? Those things help them feel better, but they really just distract, because once the TV show is over or the popsicle is done, you still would have a broken bone or a cut that need to be stitched, right? That doesn't solve the problem. It just distracts you in the moment, but doesn't really solve anything. So they very quickly, they see, they're like, oh yeah, that's true. It doesn't work. So these are the things that we typically do that we can stop doing. Well, so then what happens when we don't take care of the injuries? Just like you guys said, if we don't take care of a broken bone or a cut, it gets worse. Same for emotional injuries, it gets worse. How do you think it gets worse? So when I ask the students, what happens to your sadness if you don't take care of it? What do you think they say? From the little ones to the older ones. You can put it in the chat. So what would happen to your sadness if you don't take care of it? And you can say even what would happen to your anger if you don't take care of it. What happens to your mistakes or failures if you don't take care of that? Let's see. You keep feeling sadder and sadder. Yeah. So the little ones will say, I'll be sad. And then, as you go up the grades, they might say, I can even feel depressed. They might know that word. And then when I work with middle school or beyond, they make the connection. They say the sadness could become depression, and then depression could even become suicide. Like they can make that connection that if you don't take care of the emotional injury, it gets worse, and they can see how it gets worse. I ask, what happens to your anger if you don't take care of it? And the little ones will say, oh, I get even more angry. I might use my hands, which is so cute that they will say that because it's so true. And then the older students might say things like, I say things I regret. I might damage a friendship. And then the older students make the connection. We might become violent. That might be why people hit each other or why there's gun violence, right? They can make that connection that it's anger that wasn't treated, right? Or didn't, if we don't take care of it, they get worse. I said, when people call you names and you don't take care of it, what could happen? And that's what gives me the chills when I think about it. They raise their hand and they say, we start believing it. They call us maybe dumb or fat or ugly, whatever it is, right? And then now we start believing it. And then I ask, what happens to failures, mistakes, if you don't take care of it? And they say, we stop trying. Maybe we quit the team or the sport or the instrument. We give up. So you get the idea, right? Like all these emotional injuries get worse and the kids can see it. And, of course, parents and teachers then start seeing this. And once we see the effect of it, right, that's when we start coming together to not just create things to deal with the emotional injury, which I'm going to give you in a second, but also how do we prevent these injuries from happening in the first place? Oh, well, so you may have heard of this concept of an emotional first aid kit that families could have, classrooms could have. And in an emotional first aid kit that you can put together, your teachers can put together in your classroom. Many Montessori classrooms have. I have worked with a lot of Montessori schools, and I come in, I run this exercise, and then the children, I ask the kids, so what helps you feel better when you're upset, when you're angry, when you're sad, when someone calls you a name, all of that. And that's when they will say, oh, sometimes reading helps me, listening to music, going on a walk, a hug, talking to a friend, patting my pet, having a healthy snack, right? Like these things help me feel better. Going out in nature. And then, of course, the yoga, meditation, right? Teachers bring in some of those mindful things into the mix. Every once in a while, one kid or two is going to say something like video games, TV, ice cream, candy makes me feel better. And that's when you want to talk to them about, well, those are good distractions, not quite something that's going to really help you. So we'll leave those out. But you can put together a kit, and some schools actually have a little box and they laminate some of the images of these things, going on a walk, all the things that you could do in the classroom or during school hours. And then, of course, families, I help them create something like this as well, where, kids, I always ask them, so do you have a first aid kit at home or at school? And they're like, yes. Do you know where it is? Yes. Oh, my mom has a cabinet full of medicine and things, or we know where our first aid kit is here in the classroom. And then I say, but do you have an emotional first aid kit? And then, of course, they all look at me like, no, we don't. So we create one. So of course, this is really sweet. And people were talking about, emotional first aid kit. It's kind of a thing that's, everyone is talking about. And it's great. And of course, your classrooms could have, your families, each one of them could have, and it would be really good. But that's not enough, right? Because a first aid kit, an emotional first aid kit, is assuming that the injury already happened, right? It's a reactive strategy, right? It's when an injury took place and now we do something to help. It's much better than doing nothing and just giving it time, or just pretending it didn't happen and sweeping it under the rug, or just trying to get over it, because the emotional first aid kit's going to help you get through it, right? There's no better way. But it's still what I want. My mission, right, is to really help families, help parents, help teachers, create such a dynamic in their classroom or in their families that these injuries are not happening, right? So the rejection maybe is not happening as often, the calling each other names or putting people down, or, like so many of these things can be prevented. The frustration, the aggression, right, wouldn't be happening. So that's how we go deeper. So after working with thousands of parents and teachers, I found out that we have to overcome 4 obstacles in order to experience a healthy, peaceful, positive home or classroom environment. So now we're going to kind of like bring it all together. Do I have a lot of time? 20 minutes. Yeah, I still have a lot of time. Okay, so the first obstacle, it's like the one thing that causes most of us to struggle, even if we have the best intentions, right? Even if we go to the talks, we read the books, we have every intention to implement, we go to the conference, we do professional development in our schools and all of that, it's really our mindset gets in the way, like 80% of the time, because without us being in that great state of mind, for us to be able to, stay connected, even under a stressful situation, in the heat of the moment, for us to be able to coach our students or coach our teachers or coach our families, right? For us to use better discipline strategies, communicate that message of love, all of that, we need to be in that great state of mind, especially in the heat of the moment. So that's the first obstacle for our school community to overcome, right? Parents, teachers, us. The second one is that without positive strategies or alternative strategies, we will continue to default to stress, to yelling at each other, to threatening or bribing, right? So even in the best schools, and I know you guys are Montessori schools with amazing teachers and an environment that, we know that Dr. Maria Montessori was so ahead of her time, and she kind of built in a social emotional, message and lesson into the curriculum. It's baked in there in many ways, not all the ways, but she was right there. I know that I've always think, if she was alive today, she would have taken this whole emotional intelligence mindset to a whole new level, right? She would have been, all over this. But even though we think sometimes we have really great classrooms, I remember when I was a teacher in a Montessori school, or when I visit Montessori schools, which is all the time, I still see, right? Sometimes the teachers will do something like maybe have a little circle time in the primary classroom. And I don't know if you've done that or if you've seen it, but I remember watching many times. There's one student who is not doing the right thing, and it's poking or trying to get attention, or it's talking when it shouldn't. And the teacher says to the child next to it, "Oh, Sophie, I love the way you're sitting crisscross applesauce with your hands on your lap. I love how you are doing this." It's praising the one that's doing the right thing, but it's really trying to make the one that's right next to it feel bad that he's not doing the right thing. And it's just trying to call that out. So it's like these little subtle, and it is, violent communication in a way, right? It's shaming or it's blaming, even in subtle ways. But sometimes, classrooms or families in your community are probably threatening or bribing, right, their kids. Or if we don't do this, we won't get that. Or when we do this, we're going to do that. Or maybe even raising our voices. And even for the best of us, best parents or best teachers who really try, we know that so much of our communication is nonverbal, right? So even if we're not yelling or raising our voices, often we have an annoyance in the tone of voice. We have a facial expression, right? And our kids are reading through all of it, right? Like they are assessing all of it. So really, like the adult having the strategy, the skills to be able to, replace these things is what we need so we don't perpetuate this connection. And the only and fastest way to stop the fights, the disconnection, the frustration, especially within the family dynamic, not as much in the classroom, is to replace these tools that are short-term, cause emotional harm, create disconnection with the strategies that feel good and work, because it has to work, right? The parents got to get from A to B, kids needs to get out of the door, homework needs to get done or whatever. So it has to feel good, but it has to work. So that's the obstacle number 2 for most of the adults in our communities, parents and teachers, to overcome. The obstacle number 3 is that without a strong sense of connection, we can get through our children or our students. And probably even you as an educational leader get through your faculty because they will not want to listen to you or to your advice or respect you or cooperate with you until that connection is in place, right? We don't want to, we shut down, we push away, we defy, we don't want, we reject, if we don't feel connected to that person. So when we become a trustworthy guide, so the parents, so helping the families, right, the parents and the teachers become this trustworthy guide. And what I mean by a trustworthy guide, maybe I gave this example before, it's like, imagine that you are in a different country where they speak a different language, they wear different costumes, they do things differently, and you don't know what to do, what to say, what to wear, but you have a guide there. And this person is telling you, cover up a little here, or here we shake hands with the left hand, or, oh no, don't make this gesture here. That's an inappropriate gesture. Or, you might not want to order this. It's super spicy, or it's like goat's testicles or something, right? And we listen. We don't back talk with that guide. We don't defy. We don't say no. We don't we don't do any of that. And the reason we don't is not just because we are adults, but really is because we trust. We trust that that person is there to help us, not to hurt us. That person got our best interest in mind. That person got our back, and that person knows better or best. So when we become that in our community, to your staff, to the families, to the parents, right, to the students, and when the teachers can become that and parents can become that, then the listening, the respect, the cooperation, all of that come with ease without having to negotiate or nag or lecture, bribe, or any of those things. So really that connection piece. And the connection piece is big because it's not just creating connection, but it's learning to sustain it and then learning to repair when things break down more quickly, right? So inevitably things will break down, but that repairing, how is that being done in your school? How is that being done in the classroom? How is that being done at home? And is everybody on the same page when it comes to that? Do we have a framework for it? And then the fourth obstacle that our communities have to overcome is that without elevating both the adults and the children's emotional intelligence skills, we cannot sustain harmony. So we end up getting hit with the same behavior issues, the same emotional challenges again and again. So maybe you heard your teachers talking about how those few students have the same few misbehaviors again and again, right? The student that doesn't listen, the student that's off task, the student that is having tantrums, the student that won't leave the friends alone, the student that is, it's typically that misbehavior is happening today and then it happens later. or later in the week or the next day, right? You as an educational leader might be dealing with the teachers who also have the same, maybe the same challenge or the same behavioral things, right? The teacher that's late, she's not late once, she's late often, or the teacher that doesn't want to do things in a certain way, the ones, like any issue that we have, if you're having the same type of issue again and again, it's because we're not becoming more skilled. The better way, the only way to elevate the behavior is to elevate the skills. Once the skills go up, the misbehavior goes down, right? So for the families, of course, parents are probably complaining, like kids are not listening, or they don't cooperate, they don't want to do this, I can't get them out the door, we have these, hassles, or it's sibling bickering, and these things are happening again and again. And it's happening again and again because the way they're dealing with it is not building skills. It's just solving the problem for the moment, right? So two children fighting over a toy, you can take that toy away and say, the two of you can figure this out. I'm going to put this away. Nobody's going to have it, which I've seen done in many Montessori schools in the toddler, we're going to put this away or until I can show you again how to use this. And it's done in the home, right? With parents that take that toy away. And okay, the problem is over for that moment. But tomorrow, when these two children are playing again together, are they any better equipped to deal with the issue? Did they learn to problem solve? Did they learn to negotiate? Did they learn to respect each other's belonging? Did they learn compassion? Did they learn empathy? Did they learn problem solve? Did they learn to communicate? All the skills that they need so they can navigate the situation better tomorrow. But once we took that toy away, we took away the opportunity for them to develop the skills, right? And this is happening all the time, right? We cut these corners. Parents are doing this all the time, which means then the skills are not being developed. Then we are doomed to deal with that problem again tomorrow. So that's a big obstacle for families to overcome. So those are the 4 obstacles. And that together, of course, puts together this framework that I created based on all the things I've seen, everything that I learned and what I found out about, the parent-child dynamic, the teacher-student dynamic, and the teacher-parent dynamic. I put together this framework where we, work on everybody developing an invincible mindset, really powerful beliefs, an amazing state of being, and we learn to stay in that great state of being, and when we fall off of it, how to quickly get back to it. And then we learn the positive strategies, the approach that feels good and works. And this is, all based on research. There's positive discipline mixed with, a lot of different things. And then everybody develops this unshakable sense of connection, right? The leaders with their staff, teachers and students, teachers and teachers, teachers and parents, and then parents and children, right? And even the couples, right? Being on that same page. So really the entire community is on the same page with that sense of connection, where they don't just know how to create the connection, but they can sustain it and they repair quickly when things break down. And then everybody becomes better equipped, right? So it's the adults and the children learning the emotional intelligence skills and the mindset skills so they can work together as a team. And that's it. I really believe, that with a strong mindset and emotional intelligence skills, both the adults and children can rise above any situation. They can navigate life's challenges and they can connect with others very effectively. And then we can really meet the goals, right? I've asked thousands of parents what their goals really are, even though they come to me often with like, I just want to end the tantrum. I want to end the sibling bickering. I want my kids to listen, right? But that's the surface level, right? When I get to the bottom a little bit, to the root, and I say, but why right? Like, why do you really want to be a good parent? Why are you here? Why do you come to this talk? You could have been doing anything right now, but you're here, right? So, and then the parents tell me, well, I really want to raise a good human being, right? Who has all these amazing skills, a kind, empathetic, confident, resilient, emotionally stable person. And I really want to have a great relationship with my kids. I want them to want to come home for Thanksgiving when they are adults. I want them to confide in me. I want to have good conversations around the table. I want them to get along, right? So they want to be able to navigate and rise above all the challenges skillfully so they can have a healthy relationship with their children. And then they say, well, I just really want my children to thrive at home, at school, and in life. I want them to have an unshakable sense of self. So those are the three main goals that we all share for our students. And that's how we, can accomplish all of these goals. And I really imagine that one generation who gets this right can raise those amazingly good humans who can finally heal humanity. And that's what I would love to do with you. That's it. Oh my gosh, look at me, 4 minutes.
That was great. Does anyone have any questions for Lorena? Is anyone having any, issues with any type of social emotional learning in their schools, or with parents who have questions about this? Now's your chance to ask an expert. I think the idea of just having that emotional first aid kit in the classrooms, or just having that around circle time is great. It's a great idea that maybe some of you will take with you to your schools.
Yeah, and I would love to actually, I've been trying to just spread this message a little bit far and wide. So anybody that's here, if you would like to have a presentation similar to this, or I have several different other topics. There's like 9 different presentations for the parents. There's a whole series for the parents, and there's a few different professional development, talks for the staff. And I would love to just gift a Zoom session to your school for your community of families. So if you would want to maybe book for this fall, I'll put together a Zoom parenting night, or, like an educational evening. I would love to, to gift to the school a talk that would be similar to this.
Right. I just dropped your link there for everyone for your website.
Yeah, I actually had, I have a link that you can book something on my schedule if you want to have a little chat and have a virtual tea, a cup of coffee with me, and then we can look at, what your school's needs are, what the teachers are dealing with, what the parents are coming to you with, and then we could come up with a talk, and put something together for later this fall. If
That's
before you go, you don't mind, just put it in the chat, one takeaway, like one thing that you take away from today. I would love to just see what your takeaways are. And there's a replay for this. Will other leaders be able to?
Yes. So today's recording is going to be posted on our YouTube. I'll also send the link to you, Lorena, in case you want to share it as well. So you'll be able to watch this back. So if you didn't get a chance to take notes, or maybe you missed parts of today's session, you can watch it back on our YouTube channel. I'll be posting that later today. So you guys can access it whenever. Got some good responses.
You said the message that we spend our adult lives deconstructing our first 18 years. Yes. And Rupali said, thank you. This was very helpful. And Jennifer has
And
that.
for those of you who are joining us who are Montessori Thrive members, Lorena is going to be opening our Montessori parenting series with a conversation about emotional intelligence for your parents. So if you want a session for your parents to be able to come in and join in and ask questions in regards to, you know, building an emotional toolkit at home and how that can be exercised in, you know, outside of the school, that'll be presented to parents. I think it's on the 4th of October.
Wednesday? Yeah,
Next week.
next week.
Yes, the 4th of October. So next Wednesday we'll be live from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern with Lorena to talk to your families. It's free for parents to join. So we look forward to seeing your families there. And yeah, we'll be meeting every single Wednesday night throughout the month of October for parenting sessions. So we look forward to seeing your families for a month of learning. Next week, we have a town hall that will discuss staffing and retention in the Montessori space. So we'll give tips for recruiting employees. We know it's always tricky to find trained staff in the Montessori space. So we'll be providing as many resources as we can come up with, and just tips for recruiting on LinkedIn, on social media, on your website, etc. So if you're having trouble staffing your school right now, we'll have a conversation, and feel free to join, ask questions, or provide any resources that have helped your school. A special thank you to Lorena for coming and sharing her expertise with us. Thank you so much for your time. It was a wonderful presentation, and thank you for everyone who joined in and asked their questions and shared their ideas.
Thank you. This was a wonderful opportunity. Thanks again.
Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.